amazing week and are ready for an incredible weekend. Here in paradise, what can I say? The sun is shining, the skies are blue. Life is really, really good. And so I hope it's just as good for you wherever you are. Glad to see you if you're joining me here right now. Militsa, Bua, Wanda Beacon, Goddess Remembering, glad to see you all. Kimberly, nice to see you here. We've got Leslie, Dank, Derek, no, Dank, okay, Dank, Amir, and Theodore. Nice to see you all. Um, Today, I'm going to be talking about overcoming fear, stepping back from fear. We call this today. So, hello there, Jared. Good to see you, Adriana. Nice to see you here, Niall. Hello there. Good to see you too, Kimberly. I appreciate that very much. Um, so I'm gonna jump in just a moment or two. We're going to be talking about how to overcome fear, and why this is so important is because the research is clear that fear motivates more people than anything else. Okay, more people are motivated by fear than by anything else. And the problem with that is that if you're motivated primarily by fear, the likelihood of creating what you want is pretty small. Okay, you're moving away from what you don't want. That's what fear is about, moving away from what you don't want. But you're not so likely to be able to actually create what you do want instead. Okay, and so we're going to look at this and see if we can figure out some things that you can start doing right away to start eliminating this issue with fear. If you're like most people, it plays a significant role in your life. We have a super chat I'm going to go to. And Tessa Jane is here with a 5 Canadian contribution. Says, "Hi, sir. Which vitamin B12 supplement would you recommend?" You know what, Tessa Jane, I'm so sorry, but I'm not really qualified to answer that question because I don't really recommend supplements at all. Obviously, if you need B12, where B12 deficiency can cause brain damage, then you want to get it temporarily. But you have to look at the underlying issue. We should be able to get everything we need eating in the natural diet for our bodies, okay? So I'm vegan for 35 years and raw vegan now for coming up on 31. I have never taken a B12 supplement. We should not need it. When the body works properly, we get everything from inside. So I don't know much about the supplements. I can't really help you with that. I can help you take your health to an amazing new level so you don't need supplements. And you're much, much better off without them. Again, science is clear, okay? Taking supplements in most cases increases your risk of disease. Increases your risk of disease because we're doing something unnatural. Bottom line, we should be able to get everything we need in the way that's most natural for the body. Okay? So I wish I could help you. Let me know. I can send back your 5 Canadian if you like, but that's all I can really tell. Okay. In the meantime, what I want to do is I want to get into this subject of talking about fear. And I see Penelope has just shared that she has a fear of flying alone. I'm afraid of flying alone too. That's why I always use an airplane. I'm afraid to fly by myself without the airplane. But with the airplane, I feel pretty good. Now, I understand if you've got a fear of flying, it's a common fear. It's a common. We'll look at that, and we'll take a look at a number. We're not going to be looking at too many specific fears because the concepts apply across the board. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own experience with this and what's worked for me, and hopefully there'll be some things there that will work for you. Ian is here, Ian 444444, and says, "I'm happy that you have found love. No fear of hiding your blue skin, as per Shel Silverstein's poem. Will we see your partner at Tanglewood soon?" Well, my partner currently lives in southern Germany and is just launching a business. And for the foreseeable future, for the next months at least, we'll need to be there. Thank you, by the way. It's good to see you, and I appreciate the contribution. And so it's going to be hard for her to make a permanent move at this point. She also has a young son who, would prefer to stay where he is in his current school, etc. Having said that, she will be visiting here. They will be visiting here for 6 to 8 weeks, I believe, in just a couple months. and so a few months. And so hopefully that will push everybody over the edge. She'll get clear. I mean, yeah. I think she already knows she wants to be in the tropics, and she's pretty confident that she wants to be with me. And so I think there's a very good chance that she'll be here, but it could take a while. It might be another year or more. We'll see. I'm hoping not. Once they get through the winter, there's a little bit less impetus. I mean, it's nice enough there in Europe over the spring, summer, and fall, but really in the wintertime, nobody really wants to be there. They don't want to be there. That's for sure. Okay. Okay, so I've got a question. Again, I'm going to be jumping into this conversation about fear, but I see a comment here asking about whether someone who's underweight can fast. And we fast people who are underweight all the time, all the time. The woman who's been producing all of my YouTube videos for the last 4 years, when it first came to me 6.5 years ago, was 5'7", that's 172 at 88 pounds, 40 kilos, okay? Dramatically underweight. And we've had a lot of people like that. And yes, they fast, they get their body clean and working properly, and then they put healthy weight on. She now weighs roughly 25% more than she did when she got here, and she could not gain weight. We have a lot of people like this who can't gain weight, okay? Mañana, Verito, Victoria, mañana estoy en vivo en español. Misma hora, 9 acá en Costa Rica, los sábados español, Fridays, viernes inglés, okay? So nos vemos mañana. Regreso si puede. Okay. So let's talk about fear, because it's such an important subject. Con mucho gusto. You may or may not know this about me, but I was a bit of an adrenaline junkie when I was younger, and to a much lesser extent now. But I was a bit of an adrenaline junkie, and I still enjoy some of that kind of excitement. But you may or may not know that I raced street racing when I was 16, 17, 18. I raced my car on the streets illegally. I used to ski. Haven't been on skis in a long time. My buddies and I were threatened by ski patrols on mountains all over Colorado and Utah. We used to go take this group trip every year, and we were threatened with being off the mountain because we were skiing too fast. We would play tag on skis. I used to mountain bike. I still do a little bit of mountain biking, but not really much anymore. I just really time. Rock climb, skydive. I still ride a motorcycle. I've driven across Europe several times and across the US. I have a quadricycle. I like to surf and body surf. And I used to fly a small plane. And so, things that where there's some thrill involved. And I think people often think, you must be fearless, like I must be fearless. No, I'm not. I'm not fearless. I'm afraid of a lot of the garden variety things that most people are afraid of, and maybe you are too. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but I want to talk about how I've overcome much of that, because that's the important thing. That's what we're talking about here. This isn't necessarily about eliminating fear, okay? Fear is a completely natural emotion. There's nothing wrong with fear. It's natural to experience fear at times. It's completely natural. There are things you should be afraid of, okay? And we look up to people who are brave, right? But bravery is not the absence of fear, okay? Frankly, the absence of fear is stupidity, because there are things you should be afraid of, as I said. Bravery is action, is being willing to go forward in the presence of fear, in spite of fear, okay? That's what, a soldier who's brave, that's what they're doing. They're acting even though they've got fear, okay? So you want to be clear about this. Like there's nothing positive about having no fear. Okay, there are times where fear is a perfectly appropriate response, and I'll share some of those with you. I'll give you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. Okay, but among other things, I'm afraid of heights. I'm afraid of heights. So, being in a high place and looking down, that's scary to me. And that's something that showed up. No, I'm not afraid of being in an airplane. It's not the same. But when I was skydiving, and my job as the next jumper was to sit backwards in the plane and tell the pilot when to open the door. And then we're flying along, and I'm sitting next to this open door. That was terrifying to me. Getting out of the airplane was actually easier than that in some ways. But okay, so those are just a few of the things. But let's back up, because again, there's a lot of people are afraid of other people. They're afraid of what people are going to think. They're afraid of of looking bad or looking silly. They're afraid of rejection. Okay, and I'm no different. I experienced these fears too, but I overcame them for the most part. And I'll tell you the story. I'll tell you how it happened. I wish I could give credit to this woman, but I can't. I don't remember her name now. When I was a junior in high school, we had in our school, we had throughout all the hallways, I'm sure this is pretty common all over the world, there are lockers, right? We have these metal lockers. You had to bring your own lock in. And in your locker, this is where you'd put your lunch and your books and your coat and your guns and your drugs. And okay, hopefully not. But everyone would put all their stuff, and the first thing I would do when I would come into school is I'd put away all the stuff I didn't need to go to my first class, unless I was late and I'd go straight to class. But normally I'd stop at the locker, put everything away that I didn't need, right, and then go to my class. And so I think a lot of people did the same thing. And so before my first class, I would see the people often who had lockers around me. And there was a girl, we call her woman, but we were, I was 16 at the beginning of the year. She was 17. She was a year ahead of me. And her locker was just a couple down from mine. And so we would run into each other often in the morning. And she was beautiful. She was gorgeous. She was a cheerleader. And, depending on where you're from, maybe it was different. But where I grew up, there was a strict code. And the code said the cheerleaders were only associated with the other cheerleaders, the cool girls, and the athletes. That's it. If you weren't an athlete, if you were a guy and you weren't a football player, basketball player, maybe a soccer player, baseball player, they didn't really talk to you. Okay. We were sort of in different worlds, it seemed. And yet this girl was super friendly to me all the time. I look forward to going to my locker hoping she'd be there because she was gorgeous. And she was just so friendly. She always smiled and she was always very nice. And we would chat a little bit sometimes if there was time. We were often, on a rush to get to where we needed to be. But she was always super friendly. And I desperately wanted to ask her out. But I was afraid. I was afraid to ask her out. And so I didn't. And my friends were very supportive. They were very helpful. You know how friends can be, kids can be at that age. My friends were supportive by saying things like, "What, are you kidding? She would never go out with you. What are you thinking? Like, there's no way she would ever date you." That sort of thing. And so helpful, huh? And so I never got up the nerve a whole year, and I never got up the nerve. I mean, it was a 9-month school season. I never got the nerve to ask her out. And when I was in school, at the seniors would have their final exams, and they would leave. They would finish. I think it was a week or maybe even 2 weeks before everybody else. And so on a Friday, they finished up, and that was it. They were gone. On Monday morning, I'm standing at my locker, and one of her friends came up to me. Another cheerleader in my class came up to me and said, "She really liked you." And I thought, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. I wish I had just asked her out, right? And I vowed in that moment that I would never let this happen again. Now, I'm embarrassed to tell you, I have still sometimes not acted on something, not done something because of fear, but far less often than before. And because I became so conscious of this at a young age, at 16, I guess it was 17, at the end of the year, by the time I realized what was going on, I really was conscious about it. I've worked with my fear much differently than I did then. Okay. And I'll tell you right now, the first thing that I do when I realize I'm afraid, whatever it might be, I'll ask myself a simple question. And that question is, what's the worst thing that could happen if I act anyway? What's the worst thing that could happen if I act anyway? Okay. Now, most of the time, the answer is not, I'm likely to die, right? I mean, let's go back to this example. What's the worst thing that might have happened if I'd said to her, hey, would you like to go out with me on Saturday night? I want to go see this movie. Maybe you'd like to join me. We'll have dinner or whatever. What's the worst thing that might have happened, right? People usually say, well, she might have said no. No, that's not the worst thing. The worst thing is she might have turned to me and said, are you kidding? Are you dreaming? If you were the last boy on the planet, I wouldn't go out with you. You're ugly, you're stupid, you smell bad. I would never, ever date you under any circumstances. And then she could have reached into her locker and pulled out an AK-47. We didn't have metal detectors in schools back then, and gunned me down. Okay, that's the worst thing that could happen. Okay, not very likely, right? And that's why, the question is, what's the worst thing that's likely to happen? Okay, was that likely? No. More likely, the likely negative repercussions might have been she could have said something like, oh, thanks, that's so sweet, but I see you as a friend, or I'm dating somebody, or whatever. I mean, she was a very nice person, so the likelihood of her being nasty or gunning me down in the school hallway wasn't that high. Okay, we didn't have school shootings back then. And so what was my real risk, right? My risk was in being rejected. Now, since then, okay, a few years have gone under the bridge. A little water's gone under the bridge since then. A few years have gone by. 61 and single, never married. And so I've dated a lot, and I've risked rejection and gotten rejected many, many times. And you know what? Maybe it hurts a little bit. Maybe it bruises my ego. Sometimes my response is worse than I'd like it to be. I was very much enamored with a woman a couple of years ago, and she was, beautiful, brilliant, lovely, lovely person. And I was in a position, we spent some time together, and I asked her to, I made it clear that I was interested. And when she told me very clearly that she had no interest, I frankly, I took it like a child, like an infant. It was embarrassing. It's embarrassing now. And I'm sharing with you because I prefer to be transparent. I want you to understand, sometimes I'm still affected. And this is because of deeply embedded negative programming, which is where a lot of this fear comes from. So it's useful to be aware of it, right? But I got over it, and weeks later was back and dating and asking other, approaching other women. So it's not the end of the world, and that's the point. Okay, what's the worst thing that could have happened? Worst thing that could have happened is she would have said no, and I would have gotten over it. Maybe it would have taken me a week or a month or a year or my lifetime, but eventually I would have gotten over it, right? Definitely we get over these things, okay? And so how much risk was there? Now, in the meantime, what are the possibilities? Well, it's probably not that likely that even if I had married my high school sweetheart, that I'd still be married to her, but maybe she'd have been my high school sweetheart. Maybe my high school experience would have been completely different. Okay, maybe my life would have changed in amazing ways. Now, I don't know what might have happened. All I know is that it didn't happen. It couldn't happen because my fear allowed me, prevented me, let's say, from acting on this. And this is what's usually going on, right? So when I ask myself, what's the worst thing that's likely to happen? Usually the answer is not you might die, or that's likely to happen. I mean, it could happen, right? I ride a motorcycle. You know, my mother, when I first asked her, I think I was probably 12 or 13. Some of my friends had mini bikes, right? Little tiny motorcycles, basically, for kids. And I asked my parents if I could have one. And they said, absolutely not. And I said, okay, but as soon as I'm old enough, I'll buy a motorcycle. And I did. At 18, I bought my first motorcycle. I was always attracted to motorcycles. And I was afraid a little bit, but I still wanted to ride. And, you know, my mother still hates the fact that I ride a motorcycle, but she's gotten used to it because it's now been more than 40 years. And she knows I'm going to do the things I want to do. Okay. And again, I mean, might I get killed on a motorcycle? Absolutely. They're dangerous. No question. And that's why I'm super careful and cautious, and it could still happen, but it's not that likely. It's not like most people who ride motorcycles die in motorcycle accidents. Okay. That's not what happens. Okay. Whereas, you know, if it were likely, like if there was a, you know, a large likelihood of that happening, I probably wouldn't have done it. I want to live. I want to survive. I'm not interested in dying. No, I've never been married. But it's not too late. Could still happen. Who knows? Okay. So it just depends on the likelihood. Now, let me share another example with you, because I was, after college, I bought my first house a year after I graduated. And I was in the commercial real estate business. And I bought a house, and I was young. I was 24 years old, I think, at the time, 23 maybe. And I bought a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. I put a second floor on it, and had 4 bedrooms and 2 baths and a living room and a dining room and a kitchen and a family room, a TV room, basically. And so I thought, had 4 bedrooms and 2 baths and a living room and a dining room and a kitchen and a family room, a TV room, basically. And so I thought, I'll rooms to other young people. I don't need all the space by myself, and it can help pay the bills. It actually covered the mortgage, right? And so I had, at one point, I had 2 guys living with me. They both had the same name. They were both named John. One of them was the first alternate for the U.S. Olympic kayak team. Now, the U.S. Olympic kayak team practiced where I lived, outside of Washington, D.C. The Potomac Electric Power Company had created this place for them on the Potomac River where they could practice, where there were gates, and it was this permanent setup for them that Pepco maintained. And so most of the team lived in that area. And this guy was first alternate. So if someone had been injured or, you know, gotten sick or something, he would have been on the team. He was good. He was good. Now, not far from where I lived, he was good. He was good. Now, not far from where I lived, maybe a 10, 15-minute drive from my house, was Great Falls, still is. It's still there. I don't own the house anymore. But the Great Falls on the Potomac River. It's called Great Falls. Pretty big falls between, on the river between Maryland and Virginia. There were these big waterfalls, and there were signs. They were pretty big, and it was pretty dangerous, strong currents, and someone would drown there once every few years. Now, not many people would swim there, but the paddlers, the kayakers, would kayak over the falls. Okay, and mostly they would be there in the summertime, daylight, with other people. Okay, they wouldn't go there alone. So if something happened, there would be someone there. But John, this guy who lived in my house, would go to the waterfalls, go to Great Falls at night by himself and paddle over the falls at night in the winter by himself. And so it's cold and he's alone if something happens, and it's dark, it's nighttime. And he would go on his own. And as he was getting ready to go, he would say, "Hey, I'm going down to paddle Great Falls. You want to come?" And I thought, no, I definitely am not going to come. I'd never been in a kayak at that point in my life. I have since. But at that point, I'd never been in a kayak. I had no idea how to kayak over a waterfall in the winter time at night. Not a chance in the world. My fear stopped me from doing that. Okay. I mean, if I think about it, it's like, well, that'd be kind of exciting. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? But no, I mean, I think in that case, my fear served me well. Okay. Fear served me well because the fear made me go, no, I probably won't survive that. Okay. At the same time, and I used to rock climb. I didn't mention that when I was talking about all the exciting things I used to do. I used to climb cliffs, but with gear, okay, with a harness and a rope and someone on the bottom belaying me. Okay, if you're not familiar with the term, it's a rock climbing term. And what happens is you climb up and there's a rope that goes up over a pulley and is attached to you. So as I would climb, there'd be slack, and the person on the bottom, their job is to pull that slack in. So if I were to fall, instead of falling and smacking the ground or the cliff, I would be hanging there because he'd have all the slack. So I'd slip off the rock, but I'd still be hanging there. Okay. And so I was used to that, and I was comfortable with that. But my roommate was a much more experienced climber than I was, and he would climb the side of the office buildings in town with no gear, just hands and feet, climb up the straight vertical side of an office building. And he would say, as he was getting ready to go out, he would say, "You want to come?" Right, this would be at night in the summertime mostly, because he'd be barefoot. You want to come? And I would say, "No, I want to live. I want to survive." Because I could see myself in a pile of goo on the sidewalk. Okay. I didn't have the expertise. I wasn't good enough. I'm not going to free climb a building where falling means you're landing on a very hard surface. Okay. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that today. There's no way I'm doing that. That makes no sense to me. Now, again, if you have enough skill and there's really very little risk, okay, that's one thing. A lot of free climbers, people who do these like climb cliffs without gear, they wind up dying eventually. And maybe there was, that I'm sure that makes it more exciting for them. And as an adrenaline junkie, and I can understand that. But if you want to live, maybe not what you want to do. So my point is, there are times when fear might actually serve you. Okay. There are times where it makes sense to say, hang on, my spidey sense is tingling here, right? There's some fear coming up. Maybe I don't want to do this thing. Okay. But I would never, literally never let fear prevent me in social situations. Okay. And I used to see this happen all the time. When I was a cadet at the U.S. Air Force Academy, we had a pub on site. Now, at the time I was there, girls had started coming, and before that, it was only guys for I think 47 years or something, 46 years have been only men, like the other military academies. And just a couple of years before I went there, on the year I went there, I think the girls that were there was the third year there were women at the Air Force Academy. So there weren't very many women there. It was mostly guys. So it was like 90% men. And to be honest with you, not to insult any of the women who were there, but a lot of the women who were interested in the military were a little bit less feminine than the women I tend to be attracted to. So I wouldn't have been very interested in many of them anyway. But there was a pub on site that civilians were allowed to come to. Now, you can imagine not a lot of guys from town are going to drive up the mountain and go to a military pub to hang out there. Why would they do that unless they're looking for a fight? And you don't want to, if you're looking for a fight with military people, you don't want to do it on a military base. Okay, that's a bad place to do it. Those guys would wait for military people in town. And there was plenty of opportunities because in addition to the Air Force Academy, there's one or two Army bases there. I mean, there was a lot of military personnel in Colorado Springs at the time. So it wasn't hard for townies to meet military people if that's what they wanted, right? But what would happen is girls would come up. Okay, now girls would come up. So why would girls come up there? Well, think about it. I mean, they're coming up there to meet guys, okay? And yet the guys would be afraid to approach them often. And why would they come to meet guys? Well, if you graduate from the Air Force Academy, you are a second lieutenant. in the US Air Force. You have job security. As long as you don't do something crazy or stupid, you get a job for as long as you want it. Until you retire, you've got a job. And at the time, most of the girls in Colorado Springs didn't go to college. They went to high school. That was it. And so here, they've got the chance to meet guys who have a future, who've got a pretty solid future ahead of them. Okay. And so there'd be a lot of girls there. And I remember one night walking in, and a bunch of my buddies were sitting around a table, and there was a table not too far away with two women sitting there. One of them was gorgeous. And I sat down and I noticed, I said, wow, that girl's really pretty. And they said, yeah, but she's not very nice. They had all asked her to dance, and she'd said no to all of them. And they're like, yeah, she's not interested. And I said, well, why do you think she came here? She came here to meet somebody, okay? Maybe it's how you're approaching her. So they bet me that she wouldn't dance with me, and they lost. I got her to dance with me, and I wasn't afraid at that point because I'd learned my lesson just 2 years earlier in high school. This was 2 years after I graduated. I'd learned that lesson, or 3 years after, because I was a junior at the time. Okay, so a few years earlier, I'd learned a lesson. I'm not going to not approach someone anymore. I'm not going to do that. It's no problem. I have no problem going to that extent, right? Reaching out a little bit. I see Eva Daniela is here and has made a £1.79 contribution. I don't see a question or a comment, Eva. So if there's something you wanted to ask, you can comment right below. Most people actually do it in the same box as the super chat, so it doesn't get lost. But I don't see anything here. Nothing's come up yet. Maybe it's still coming. So because you made a contribution, I will answer your question if you ask one. Okay, but again, the point is, don't let this happen. And this happens all the time, all the time. I have very, very dear friends in Europe, in Holland. In fact, their son is my godson. They asked me when he was about a year old if I would be his godfather. He'll be 21 soon. I've known these folks for a long time. I actually met them on my first lecture tour in Europe. The first time I was speaking in Amsterdam, I met him. She was home with the baby. The baby at that point was just a few months old. And I came back to speak again in Amsterdam just a few months later, and they insisted that I stay at their house. And that's how I first met her. And, we all became very close. And anyway, I remember when they came to visit me once, they told me a story. They flew over to the US because their spiritual teacher was in the US, and their spiritual teacher was had a partner. They were both psychologists, and I don't remember if it was the man or the woman that was their spiritual teacher, but their partner, they were both psychologists, and they met at a conference in Europe. And the story was that there was this strong mutual attraction. And again, this would have been, probably 25 or even 35 years ago. Even today, in most cases, the guy is expected to be the one to approach first, right? And this was certainly the case 30 or 35 years ago. And so there was a strong mutual attraction, but he was afraid to act on it. And so, end of the conference, he goes to his hotel room. It's all in the hotel conference, space. And he goes up to his room, packs his bags, and gets on the elevator to check out and go home without having her phone number. Back then, we didn't have email addresses, but without having her phone number or a way to contact her. They might have never heard from her, seen each other again, right? And coincidentally, there's no coincidences, but as he's riding down to the lobby to check out and leave the hotel, the elevator stops on a lower floor, and she gets on the elevator. And she sees him, he's got all his bags. She wasn't checking out, but she sees that he is. And she says, "Looks like you're on your way out." And he said, "Yeah." And she said, "I'd like to stay in touch. Here's my number. Here's my card." She reached out to him, and they may not still be married. Again, this was a long time ago now. But the point is that, again, his life could have been completely different and perhaps much lonelier, or maybe much worse, because he was afraid to ask this woman out. Okay? So remember, Remember, this first key I've already taught you is always start by asking yourself, when you notice there's fear, ask yourself, what's the worst thing that's likely to happen if I act anyway? Okay, if the answer is she might say no, or I might look bad, then act anyway. Act anyway. There was a song that came out, I think, way back in the 80s. It was about no, I can't remember. But you know what? I'm not thinking of a song. I'm sorry. What I'm thinking about, what a great story. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Um, what I'm thinking about is, well, what was it? Just a saying, I guess. Dance as if no one is watching. I don't remember the rest. Okay. But it reminds me, I had a friend that we're at the wedding of a close friend we'd grown up with, a guy I'd known since I was still close friends, since we were 6 years old. And we're at this wedding. All of the high school buddies are there together. He was one of the first of the group that got married. And one of my friends is standing where everyone's dancing and having a great time, except one guy. And he's standing against the wall and he's tapping his foot and he's snapping his fingers. He's clearly moved by the music, but he won't get on the dance floor. And I said to him, "Come on, come dance with us." He's like, "No, I don't like dancing." Well, that's clearly not true. His body wanted to move. What was going on? What was going on was that he was afraid to look bad. And there's a lot of people who do the same thing. And I figured, screw it, who cares, right? And this is another key you have to really be clear about. Okay. By the way, we have another super chat here, so I'm going to comment. I think I see Jonas's comment. Jonas says, "You're wearing an amazing shirt, lovely print." Thank you so much. I appreciate that very much. I love this shirt. It's linen. I love the feel of it, and I bought this in Mexico. It actually came from Italy, but I bought it in Mexico, and last year, and really, really like the way it looks and feels. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. Martha is in the house. Martha has made a $35 contribution. Martha, thank you so much for your consistent generosity. I truly, truly appreciate that very much. I really, really do. I know you don't have to do that. I can imagine you've got plenty of other places you could spend your money, and I appreciate your willingness to support what I'm trying to do here. So, or am doing, I suppose. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right. Okay. I'm only doing super chat questions right now, but I see just below Martha's super chat donation, I see a comment from someone, Eva, who says, "Hi, Loren. Yes, I wanted to come to you 4 years ago, but other people helped me to change my mind, and now I'm scared, so scared to leave my current life in London." Okay, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? It's likely to happen if you left your current life in London. I mean, and you're talking about to visit, to fast with me for 4 weeks, 21-day fast, 7 days. What's the worst thing? What's the worst thing that's likely to happen? Likely to happen. Okay. I mean, we fasted 10,000 people, and 9,999 of them went home and did amazingly well. Right? I mean, there's going to be a few people here and there who well, I mean, we have people sometimes who come to us very, very sick who may not survive the process. But no one who's been well has ever died because they fasted with us. Not once, not ever. Okay, it's never happened. Everyone gets much healthier. Everyone winds up emotionally and spiritually becoming much, much bigger, much more powerful. So what's the worst thing that's likely to happen? I mean, again, and I get that there may be a lot of fear, so it may be difficult for you. But if it were me, I would say, screw it. And it's surprising. I meet a lot of people that have trouble traveling on their own. I've been, I think, in around 70 countries now. And I've traveled to a lot of those places by myself. Okay, often, I don't have the language, not a problem. I mean, even today, it's easier than ever. You can get a chip for your phone, even if you don't have coverage in that country, and you can get a local chip, and now you can use a translator app or something. I've never used that. I've never done that. I've always managed to get by. And to be honest, it's pretty easy speaking English because today with English being the de facto international business language. Anywhere you go, there's people who speak English. I've never, ever run into a problem. Could it happen? Absolutely. Sure. Could you meet bad people? Sure. You can meet them at home in London. There's plenty of bad people, right? London's a giant city with all kinds of crime, as is true in any city. I'm not picking on London. The point is, are you safer staying in London? Probably not. You'd probably be safer here in Costa Rica, where it's actually a very safe country. And I live in the safest district in the country. Would fasting hurt you? Probably not. If you can follow simple directions, it would almost certainly be amazing for you. So, if it were me, I would apply that. I would apply this simple question: what's the worst thing likely to happen? And then if the answer is nothing, I would make it happen, because it's a question of cost versus return, right? Risk reward, right? I'm a finance guy from way back. I studied finance. I have a bachelor's degree, and most I gave up when I left to start my own company. I decided that it was the master's degree I was working on in finance at the American University in Washington, D.C. was too expensive to finish on my own. So the company, I was an officer, the youngest officer of the second largest commercial real estate company at the time in Washington, D.C., and they were paying 100% of the cost of my degree. But I left them to do my own thing and thought, I don't really need the degree. I'm never going to work for anyone else again, and I never have. And so I thought, I'm not going to keep paying for this. But my point is, I'm a finance guy. So risk reward, okay? The reward is amazing. The reward is huge. The potential benefits are enormous. What's the risk? It's pretty minimal. I mean, the likelihood of having a problem are pretty small. Here we go. Thank you, Ian. Sing like no one's listening. Love like you've never been hurt. Dance like nobody's watching. And live like it's heaven on earth. Okay, beautiful. It's funny. Ian, who just shared that, congratulated me earlier for finding love, right? It's not easy to find a really great partner. It's easy to find someone if that's all you need. But if you want someone who really, is a perfect, is an excellent partner for you, for me, that's not so easy to do. And I think, unfortunately, the more conscious we are, the smaller the pool of potential people. Most of everyone here with me is probably in the same position. It's not so easy. If you've got a great partner, be glad. So Ian is sharing this piece, and it's funny. My mother, when I would meet somebody, and I talk to my mother once a week. She's in Houston. Every Sunday I call her, ask her how she's doing, make sure she's okay. She's 87 years old, so I'm always aware that I might not see her, talk to her again at some point. And so whenever I tell her that I'm dating someone new, she's always like, "Oh, honey, I hope this works out. I don't want to see you get hurt." She's like, Mom, getting hurt's not that big a deal, right? Like the pain of a relationship that doesn't work out, I mean, it's really not that big a deal. And the reward is so huge, potentially huge, that I'm never going to stop trying. I'm never going to stop asking women out, or why would I do that? Okay. I'm not going to try to avoid the pain. And that's what fear is. Fear is about avoiding pain. You don't want to do that. Okay. Instead, you want to get clear about what you want for yourself. I have a volunteer here who's a client and a student of mine. And he said, back on New Year's, you shared that you were ready to create an amazing relationship. And he said, I'm so glad you've manifested that. And I have. I mean, it's, again, there's lots of amazing, beautiful women, but it's not always going to feel like a great fit. Okay. And so, I would say, go out there and try. Go out there and meet people and talk to people and ask people out and spend some time getting to know people, because you have nothing to lose. Okay. The only way you definitely lose is if you don't try. All right. I hope that makes sense. All right. I've got a couple more super chats here. Alexis De Prato has made a €4.99 euro contribution. Said, hello, Loren. Is there a link between food people eat and violence? The world is so absurd. Wars, global warming, pollution, modern slavery, racism, etc., etc., etc. Yes, absolutely true. There is indeed a connection between what people eat and how they feel emotionally. And in fact, I was going to bring this up anyway. So thank you so much, Alexis, for prompting me. It's a good time to move to there, to transition. It's a great transition. It's said that in ancient Greece, the Greek athletes, the Olympic athletes, right, who had these, you see the sculptures, right? Theoretically, this is what they look like. Who knows? But these amazing physiques. These athletes were fed a fruit-based diet. Okay, and anyone who eats a fruit-based diet knows that you can feel and function amazingly well eating fruit. You can be strong. You can be incredibly fit. Healthier than ever. Right now, I mean, again, it may be partly body type. It may well be that I'm never going to have the physique of a Greek god. At least not if I don't work out, 3 hours every day, which I'm not doing and don't have any intention of doing. It's not something I'm interested in. But these people ate a fruit-based diet. Now, at the same time that the Olympians were eating a fruit-based diet, having these incredible physiques, the Greek government saw fit to feed the soldiers meat. Now, if the athletes had these incredible physiques and were incredibly powerful, etc., wouldn't that be good for the soldiers too? No, the Greek government knew that what they needed was to ensure that their soldiers were aggressive, okay? And eating meat makes people aggressive. Eating animal products makes people aggressive. Okay, and that's why they fed the meat. So there's no question, if you're eating processed food, or even have processed food in your body because you haven't gotten it all out yet from detoxing, you're going to be far less peaceful, far less emotionally balanced. Not to say you might be incredibly emotionally balanced and incredibly peaceful, maybe way more than I'll ever be for various reasons. Who knows? But my point is, if that toxic garbage is still in your body, you'll never be as peaceful and as balanced emotionally as you could be. Maybe you're capable of much more than I am for some reason. Okay, it's not about comparing me to anyone else. It's about how are you doing relative to what's possible for you. So diet plays a huge role. Okay? Hydration plays a huge role. It's not just about being raw vegan. It's about eating the natural, simple, mono high water content fruit meals and simple green salads that our bodies are made for. And I don't mean exclusively, because I'll eat gourmet raw food. And last night, actually, I'm nursing some wounds today, not because I was fighting, but I was fighting with 4 or 5 or 6 D99 durians last night. Durian, one of my favorite things on the planet. We had a little feast here last night. I'm the official durian opener. And the D99s, they're super hard, and those little points are super sharp. So I've got several holes in my hands now, and you see me doing this. It's because it hurts a little bit. There's one there, and there's one there, and there's one there. It's what happens. Anyway, so yes, you can still eat durians and gourmet raw food, but the bulk of your diet should be the optimal diet of mono high water content fruits, mono meals, high water content fruits, simple green salads. Those things support all of your body's needs, including the need for perfect hydration. Okay, you're going to get that perfect water from these foods. All right. Eva is back. Hello, Eva. Has made a £8.99 contribution. Thank you so much. And said, yes, I wanted to fast with you. I changed diet by listening to others, but back on track again. I emailed you about Los Colorados, Las Cascadas. Is there a chance I can email you again, please? Yes, of course. I'm so sorry. I don't know what you mean if I didn't respond to you. And I apologize, to anyone here. If you've messaged me or emailed me or put in a fasting application and haven't heard back from me, folks, I am so busy. It's crazy. I normally have 3 or 4 group fasting calls with remote fasters every day. We only take 6 people in a group. So I'm working with as many as 20 or more people in the 4 different groups. Often we're usually full when we're here. I now have this amazing partner, and we spend time communicating every day. And I spend free time with her when I can. I'm working on Las Cascadas. I'm working on a book. I'm working on various projects. I've got the Academy for Vibrant Living. We're working right now on various marketing things and so forth. And so there's a lot going on at any given time. And Eva, I am so sorry. If you email me and I didn't respond, I apologize. I don't intentionally ignore anyone. Okay, so please write again. And I promise you, if you write to me again, I'll respond to you within 24 hours. I'll do everything I can to get back to you quickly. So send me a quick message today if you'd like, and let's start that conversation. Okay? All right. Charles D. retracted a message and made a $2 contribution. So thanks for the contribution, Charles. I hope everything is okay. I see Adriana saying, oh my God, and I don't know if there's a problem with I see the connection's unstable. I'm not sure if that's what the oh my God's about. I'm not really sure what's going on there. So, all right. Tessa Jane says, yet to try durian. Well, you're going to want to do it. So I see we're running out of time here. I've only got about 5 minutes left. And let me think what else I want to share with you. So, the key, the most important piece, there's two things. One of them, this question, what's the worst thing likely to happen if I act anyway? Okay, that's the first question. The second question, not really a question. The second thing that you want to do is you want to get practice. Okay, so what happens now when I realize I'm afraid of something? I'll ask myself this question: what's the worst thing that's likely to happen if I act anyway? And then, if the answer is not, I'll probably die, then what I'll usually do, especially if it's something like I'd like to do but I'm afraid to do. I remember, for instance, it was my second trip to Costa Rica, probably 22 or 24 years ago, like 24 years ago. I was here visiting. I had a friend that had a place. I was there. He took me to a waterfall not too far from where he lived. And again, I'm afraid of heights. And there's these young kids that are sliding down this rock. It's a smooth rock and dropping into the pool below. And it was only probably 15 feet or so. It wasn't super high. But I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, oh, that just terrifies me. Just looking at that, it's scary to me. Okay, it's scary. And so I thought, okay, because I'm scared, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to get over my fear. Okay. In fact, I remember back when I was at the Air Force Academy, I used to scuba dive as well. And I got my open water certification in New Mexico at a place called Blue Hole. And it's probably, what's 85 feet deep. And I'm thinking it could be 100 feet in diameter. It's like a big round hole in the ground in the middle of the desert where it's filled with spring water. And there's all kinds of life in there, and you can go in there and scuba dive. And we drove down from Colorado Springs from the Air Force Academy. It was, I think, a 5 or 6 hour drive, and spent a weekend staying in a motel, doing various scuba dives there to get certified, a whole group of us. And there were these big rocks on one side that were probably, I want to say, 25 or 30 feet high. And I may be exaggerating. Maybe this is just my memory, my fear exaggerating this. But my friends were jumping off the rocks into the pool. And we had wetsuits on, so the impact of hitting the water was a little bit lessened because of the wetsuit. And I went up there. The impact of hitting the water was a little bit lessened because of the wetsuit. And I went up there to take a look, and I'm looking over the edge, and I'm terrified of heights. And one of my friends pushed me, and someone on the other side got a picture of this. The expression on my face, I don't have the picture anymore, but I was clearly terrified. Okay. But I'll tell you something. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And I went back and jumped various times afterward. Okay. And so, it probably wouldn't happen if someone not push me. But now I realize I'm afraid of something. If I don't think I'm likely to really badly injure myself or die and it's something I want to do, I'm going to do it. And so this is the second key, okay, is exercise that muscle of facing your fears. Just go out there and do the thing, whatever it is, unless you think it's really going to be, it's really likely to hurt you or seriously or kill you, then do it anyway. Just go ahead and do the thing, because that's how you get stronger. And the more you practice this, the next time the fear comes up, the more practice you have, the more likely you are to go, okay, I'm a little bit afraid, so what? And just keep on going, okay? Because I promise you, if you go to a library and you go to the biography section and you look at all the amazing stories of incredible people, these are people who faced their fears. They were afraid too, okay? People who've accomplished amazing things, they had fears too, but they acted anyway. Okay, so if you want to become the most amazing version of yourself possible, I've got a 10 o'clock call. That's right now. And I see there's another super chat here. Charles D has made a $5 contribution and says, if you chew mint during a water fast to help solve the problem of bad mouth taste, to what degree will a water fast be compromised? Well, I don't understand to what degree. I mean, if you compromise it, it's not the same. If you're taking in any nutrients whatsoever, you're not actually fasting. So you can't chew mint while fasting. Charles, you're not really fasting if you're chewing mint, because you're taking nutrients into your body, and your body says, oh, there's food coming, and your whole physiological state changes. So this, by the way, this is one small example of why it might pay to have supervision. Okay, you want to have someone guiding you through the process who really understands the process. I guarantee you, if you fast with me, it'll take you to a whole new level. Okay, it happens all the time. Folks, I've got to go. Thank you so much for being here. Before I go, I see that less than half of the people currently with me on YouTube have given this a thumbs up. Did you hate this? Is this bad? Is this bad information? Do you not like listening to me? I mean, what's going on here? If you think this is valuable, okay, and over here on Instagram, I see there are 14 likes, I think. But folks, if this is beneficial, please give it a like or a thumbs up. Show the love, share the love a little bit. Don't forget to, if you think this is valuable enough that other people would benefit from it, don't forget, you can take the link and you can share it on your page or your group or your channel or wherever you like. Okay, so the idea is to share information that's helpful to people so people can live a better life. And if you think this qualifies, hey, let's get it out there to as many people as possible. All right. Okay, guys, I've got to go. I hope you have a fantastic week. I will be back next Friday at the same time and look forward to seeing you then. Take care, everybody. Lots of love to you. Bye-bye.